Hello YouTubes, my name is Chantel and I am a marine biologist for those who don't know. Now, I knew I wanted to be a marine biologist ever since I was a child, but I can remember sitting in biology class listening to my teacher talk about all the amazing things that biologists and specifically marine biologists had discovered about our planet and about the ocean. And I remember thinking to myself, I wonder if there's going to be anything left for me to discover in the oceans one day when I grow up and become a marine biologist. Oh boy, how wrong was I. There are still so many mysteries of the oceans and so many things that we as marine biologists don't know, don't understand about this huge big blue thing that is on our planet. So today I am going to talk about some of the things that we still have no idea about in the ocean. So first up, as one might expect, is the deep sea. Pretty much anything and everything about the deep sea. There's still so much that we don't know about the vast majority of our oceans because most of the oceans are deep. A lot of the stuff is all the way down there in the deep, dark, murky depths. And while there have been some amazing technological advances and there have been a lot of scientific explorations that have taken place in the past couple of decades, we still don't really know what goes on down there. We don't really know what the ocean floor looks like. We don't really know what lives down there. We don't really know how they live down there. I mean, you take for instance the first one. What does the ocean floor look like? Okay, so we have maps of the ocean floor. We know how deep it is. We know that in some places you have really deep trenches. We know that in some places you have mountain ranges. But 95% of it remains unseen by human eyes. We haven't even seen what's down there. Now, I remember a couple of months ago, I was watching Blue Planet 2, the deep sea episode, and they were talking about this phenomenon that I never heard of before, something called brine pools, which are essentially these super salty lakes at the bottom of the ocean floor. And the reason why they form these lakes is because this water is so much saltier, therefore so much denser. So you have these weird lakes at the bottom of the ocean, and there are these really special animals that live in there and all kinds of things. It's stuff that you probably couldn't even imagine of. So if we are just recently discovering things like brine pools, can you imagine what else might be down there? And not only that, we don't even understand how animals live down there. So there's a phenomenon called deep sea gigantism, which is essentially that a lot of stuff that is down there gets really, really big. Think of the giant squid, which can reach over 14 meters long. Why in the world do these animals grow so big? We actually don't know. So there are a couple of theories, and one of the leading theories is that larger animals will proportionally use less energy. So the bigger you get, you can conserve more energy, which is really important because there's not a lot of food down there. But really, this is just a theory and we don't actually know. And not only that, we don't even know how old these animals get. So there was a really cool study that was published, I think in 2016, that used radiocarbon dating to age Greenland sharks, which are these sort of really big, deep ocean sharks, I think in the North Sea. And they found that some of these individuals were about 400 years old. I mean, these things are living for centuries. So you have these really big animals, you have these really old animals. Why and how they grow so big and for so long, nobody actually really knows. And I know this is cliche and a lot of people know that we don't know much about the deep sea ocean, but really it is the last frontier of our planet and the discoveries to be made are so exciting. So next up is something you might assume that we know everything about. That is whales. Whales are very popular. There is a lot of research that happens on them. This research has been happening for a very long time. A lot of people who say they want to be marine biologists really just want to work on whales. So we do know a lot about them, but there are still quite a few things that we don't understand. So take for example baleen whales, which are the whales that filter feed microorganisms out of the ocean. They make noises very much like their toothed whale cousins. A little bit different. So with your toothed whales, they can make clicks and whistles and these really complex sounds, whereas baleen whales just make these moaning noises. But the thing is, they lack two very important structures that you need when producing noise. So the first thing is they don't have any vocal cords. The second thing is they don't have a phonic lip structure, which is a lip structure that allows you to do this and make noises with your lips. So if you don't have these two very important things that you need to make a noise, how are they making these noises? Again, this is something we actually still don't know. There are some theories, and there is some maybe just like a very basic description of what might be going on, but the real detailed mechanics and what is going on, how they make these noises, we actually don't know. And not only that, we don't even understand why they make these noises. Most marine biologists think it's for mating because it happens mostly in mating season, but there are other contradicting theories. Some people think it's to explore the ocean around them. So really, why they make these noises is also still something we don't quite understand. So even whales, which is something you think we know everything about, there are a lot of questions that remain unanswered. So next up is something that is really close to my heart, and it is what I did my personal research on, and that is stingrays, or more generally rays, which include things like manta rays or eagle rays, just all of the flat pancakes in the ocean. And actually the reason why I wanted to research stingrays was, I think it was in my second year lectures at university, one of my lecturers said that rays remain one of the least studied group of vertebrates. And the more I worked with these animals, the more I realized how true this was, and the more I realized how much we actually don't know about this huge group of animals. And it ranges from simple things such as knowing what species they are. I mean, the rate of new species discovery in this group of animals is ginormous. And not only that, if you have a species and you think you know what it is, you might not even be correct. So I'll take an example from my own work. I was working on 3 species of stingrays in this one small area. And for the whole 5 years that I was working on them, I was working under the assumption that one of the species was something called Pasternacus cephan. And the reason why I thought it was the species is because that's what the map showed was there. This is the species that we thought occurred there. But towards the end of my studies, I actually sent off genetic samples to a lab in America. And the results came back and they said, nope, sorry, it's not that species, it's actually a different species. So I had been working under the assumption for 5 years that I was working on one species because that's what we thought lived there, where it's actually a very different species. And not only that, when you look at more complex ecological understandings, like things like what do they eat? You know, 2 of my species that I worked on, there had been no published dietary studies. We don't know what they eat. And not only that, we don't know how they move about. A lot of marine biologists think that stingrays are quite resident in nature, which means they like to stick around in a small area for long periods of time. But again, the data is just not sufficient enough to draw these conclusions from. And some of the animals that I tagged moved hundreds of kilometers. So are they resident? Do they move around a lot? This is stuff that we really don't even know. And the lack of data is so vast that the IUCN Red List, which is the organization that ranks animals and says they're either endangered or vulnerable or they're still okay, they rank 45% of ray species as data deficient, which simply means we don't even have enough information to make a call on whether they're endangered, whether their populations are healthy. Really, there's just so much we don't know about them, and that's why I love working with them, because everything you discover is new information. It's very important information. So again, this is just a big group of animals that are very large, occur all over the globe. You think we know a lot about them, but there's still so much that we don't understand. Now, the reason why we have such big gaps in our data on the ocean is because it's actually really difficult to do research in the ocean. You know, science is based on observations. You observe something and you think, ooh, I wonder what's going on there. But it's really difficult to observe what's going on underwater. I mean, yes, we can spend a couple of hours diving or putting down cameras, but these are just like really small snapshots of what is truly going on down there. So it's difficult to do research, it's difficult to draw conclusions. This is one of the reasons why we have such big gaps in our knowledge on the ocean. And if that wasn't enough, you know, our planet is changing so quickly. We're going through climate change, the oceans are warming up in temperature, we have the ice caps that are melting, the ocean pH is changing, it's becoming slightly more acidic. So with these changing oceans, how are animals going to react to these changes? For example, you have animals that make their shells out of the chemicals in the water, and if all of a sudden the pH balance of the water is changing, will these animals still be able to make their shells? Or say, for example, you have animals that occurred in warmer waters. Will they now change their ranges to occur in different areas, because in those areas now the water is getting warmer there? And I'm sure these are questions that keep marine biologists up at night, because we don't even understand what's going on now. How are we supposed to predict what is going to happen in the ocean? How are these animals going to behave with all these changes that are taking place? So really, marine biology is such an interesting field to be in at the moment. There's so many questions that still need answers. There's so many mysteries that remain unsolved. And really, it needs as much scientific attention as we can give it, because the oceans are so important to us, not only as a food source, but they keep up the oxygen levels in the atmosphere, and that is actually just a whole nother video in and of itself. But the oceans are so important to us, so we need to try our best to understand what is going on down there. So to any aspiring marine biologists out there, I hope this video has inspired you a little bit, maybe get your brain juices flowing. Think about some of the things that you want to study one day when you become a marine biologist. And please, if you have any comments or questions, if you can think of anything that is a big gap in our ocean knowledge, comment down below. I love reading your comments. Please like the video, subscribe to my channel. There's some more amazing content coming out soon. But that's all for today. So until next time, I hope you all have a fabulous day.